Senior Security Update. The 2000 check, the Supreme Court ruling, and what every Social Security recipient needs to know right now. Hey, welcome back. I'm Zane, and I need you to stay with me for the next few minutes because what I'm about to walk you through is one of the most important things I've covered on Senior Security Update in a long time. Here's what happened this week. The Supreme Court of the United States made a ruling. A real one. A significant one. One that directly touches the monthly Social Security check you depend on. Not next year. Not someday down the road when Congress finally gets its act together. Right now. This week. And Washington, true to form, did not send you a letter explaining what changed, what it means for you, or what you might be owed. They never do. But here's what else is happening at the same time. There is a very real, very active conversation moving through Congress right now about $2,000 supplemental payments for Social Security recipients. And before you roll your eyes and say you've heard that one before, stay with me. Because the level of momentum behind this proposal right now is different from anything we've seen in recent years. And the combination of this Supreme Court ruling and this legislative push creates a window that seniors across this country absolutely cannot afford to ignore. I've spent decades watching how Washington handles the people who actually worked for this money, who paid into this system their entire lives, and who now depend on it in retirement. And the pattern I've seen over and over again is this. When something big drops on a Friday afternoon, when a ruling this size quietly slips into the news cycle right before the weekend, they are counting on you to miss it. They are counting on the news moving on before you fully understand what just changed. That is not going to happen today. Not on this channel, not on Senior Security Update. So let's cut through every layer of noise, skip the political spin on both sides, and talk straight numbers and straight facts. Because this is your retirement, this is your money, and you earned every single penny of it. The Supreme Court ruling, what it actually means in plain English. Let me start with the Supreme Court decision, because I've seen the headlines this week, and most of them are doing one of two things. They're either wildly overstating what happened, which gets clicks but leaves you confused, or they're burying the real story underneath so much legal language that nobody over 65 wants to decode it after dinner. So I'm going to break this down the way I break everything down on this show, plain, direct, and honest. The court's decision this week carries significant weight specifically because it touches the administrative authority of the Social Security Administration. Now, let me translate that into language that actually means something to your daily life. For years, many, many years, there have been ongoing legal battles over how much power federal agencies like the SSA have to interpret their own rules and then apply those interpretations however they see fit. And seniors have been on the losing end of that equation more times than I care to count. The agency would make an internal decision about how to calculate something, how to define a qualifying condition, how to apply a rule that Congress passed, and courts would largely defer to the agency's own judgment. In other words, the SSA could essentially be the judge, the jury, and the decision-maker of its own policies, all at the same time, with very little meaningful outside check on that power. What the court has now done is place a significantly stronger legal check on exactly that kind of unchecked bureaucratic authority. That is not a small procedural footnote buried in the back of a legal opinion. That is a fundamental shift in the legal landscape governing how your benefits can be managed, adjusted, interpreted, and frankly, let's call it what it is, manipulated without your knowledge or consent. Think about what that shift actually means for your real life. It means that when the Social Security Administration tries to quietly change how they calculate your cost of living adjustment, there is now a stronger legal foundation to push back against that. It means that when the SSA decides internally that certain groups of seniors qualify for fewer benefits based on their own interpretation of the statute, courts are no longer required to simply take the agency's word for it. It means that the days of the SSA moving the goalposts whenever it was convenient for the bureaucracy are significantly more constrained going forward. And if you've spent any time actually dealing with the Social Security Administration, if you've sat on hold for 2 hours only to get transferred and put on hold again, if you've been denied benefits you clearly qualified for, if you've received letters that directly contradict what a representative told you 6 months earlier, then you understand on a deeply personal level why this ruling matters. Because for a long time, you were playing a game where the other side could change the rules mid-play and there wasn't much you could do about it. That has now changed in a meaningful and lasting way. Now, I want to be completely straight with you here, because I respect you too much to hype this beyond what it actually is. This ruling does not put a check in your mailbox tomorrow morning. It does not automatically reverse a bad decision the SSA made about your specific benefits. What it does is change the legal landscape in a way that advocates, attorneys, and lawmakers can use to fight much harder and much more effectively on your behalf going forward. Think of it this way. If you've been in a negotiation where the other side kept moving the goalposts, and then someone came in and said those goalposts are fixed now and they cannot be moved, you haven't won the game yet. But now at least you're playing on a fair field. And when you're talking about the retirement security of tens of millions of Americans, playing on a fair field matters enormously. It matters for this generation of retirees, and it matters even more for the generation coming right behind you. The $2,000 check, where the proposal actually stands right now. Now let's get into the part of this conversation that I know is on everyone's mind, the $2,000 checks. Because I see the questions coming in every single week on Senior Security Update, and I want to give you a real, thorough answer. Not a headline, not a soundbite, but an honest breakdown of exactly where this thing stands. Let me start by saying this. There is real movement happening in Washington right now around supplemental payments for seniors. Real movement, not rumor, not wishful thinking, not the kind of vague lawmakers are discussing language that usually means absolutely nothing is happening. There are multiple specific proposals actively circulating in Congress, some attached to broader Social Security reform packages, some standing entirely on their own, that would provide a payment of up to $2,000 specifically targeted to Social Security recipients who fall below certain income thresholds. These proposals are not entirely new. Versions of this idea have been floating around since the pandemic era, when stimulus checks went out to a broad swath of Americans. But here's the thing. Seniors, particularly those on fixed incomes, those who had already retired and weren't collecting wages, consistently felt like they got the short end of the stick during those rounds of stimulus. And they weren't wrong to feel that way. Many of the relief programs were structured in ways that benefited working-age adults far more than retirees. The frustration from that period has never fully gone away. It built up, and it has been building political pressure ever since. What's different now, what has genuinely changed the momentum around this proposal, is the combination of two things. Sustained public pressure from seniors who are exhausted from watching their purchasing power erode year after year, and an electoral environment in which politicians on both sides of the aisle are acutely aware of one very simple fact. Seniors vote. Seniors vote consistently. Seniors vote in higher numbers than any other demographic group in this country. And right now, with the political calendar where it is, legislators are feeling real pressure to show up for the people who show up for them at the ballot box. I want to be clear. That's not cynicism. That is just an honest description of how the legislative process actually works in this country. And I'd rather you understand it clearly so you're not surprised by the timing of any of this. So let's talk about what the actual proposal looks like in its current form. The most serious and most discussed version being circulated right now would target Social Security recipients who receive monthly benefits under a specific income threshold. Most of the proposals being floated place that qualifying ceiling somewhere around $800 to $2,000 per month in current Social Security benefits. If your monthly Social Security check falls below that number, you would potentially qualify for the supplemental payment. The payment amount itself varies depending on which version of the proposal you're looking at. On the more modest end, some proposals structure this as a flat payment of around $400, essentially a fourth stimulus-style check specifically for seniors. On the more generous end, the number goes up to $2,000 in a lump sum. There are also versions of the proposal that would not structure this as a lump sum at all, but instead spread the additional funds across several months as an increased monthly benefit. And I want to tell you, some senior advocates actually prefer that structure, and here is why. A lump sum payment, even a helpful one, can create serious complications if you are currently receiving Medicaid, SNAP benefits, or any other means-tested assistance program. Here is what I mean by that. Many assistance programs have strict income and asset thresholds. When a large lump sum arrives in your bank account, even temporarily, it can push your countable income or your countable assets above the eligibility limit for those programs. And if that happens, you can lose access to benefits you depend on, sometimes for months, while you navigate the process of proving your eligibility was disrupted by a one-time payment rather than a permanent change in your financial situation. This is not a hypothetical. This happened to real seniors during the pandemic stimulus rounds. People received checks they genuinely needed and then found themselves temporarily disqualified from Medicaid or food assistance because of how that money showed up in their financial picture. The government was not quick to fix those situations. The process of resolving them was confusing, time-consuming, and caused real hardship for people who thought they were getting help. I am not telling you this to scare you away from the money if and when it comes. I am telling you this so you can plan ahead right now before anything arrives. If you currently receive any form of means-tested assistance alongside your Social Security benefits, I want you to contact your local area agency on aging or a qualified benefits counselor before you cash any supplemental check. Ask them specifically how a lump sum payment would affect your current eligibility. Get the answer in writing if you can. Have a plan. Because the government will not proactively reach out to warn you about this interaction. That's not how this works. You have to be the one who asks the right questions ahead of time. The bigger picture, the long-term financial health of Social Security. Now I want to spend some time talking about the larger context here, because the Supreme Court ruling and the $2,000 check conversation are really two very visible symptoms of a much deeper underlying issue. And that issue is the long-term financial stability of the Social Security system itself. I've been covering this on Senior Security Update for years, and I'm going to keep covering it because too many people are either in denial about the math or they've been reassured by people who should know better and chose comfort over honesty. So here's the honest version. The Social Security Trust Fund, based on the most recent trustees report, is projected to face a significant funding shortfall within the next decade if Congress does not take meaningful legislative action. We are talking about potential automatic benefit reductions in the range of 20 to 25% across the board. Not because anyone chose to cut your benefits, but because the math of how the system was structured simply doesn't hold up indefinitely without adjustment. I want to be absolutely clear about something because this point gets distorted constantly in both directions. Social Security is not going away. The program will not disappear. If you are currently receiving benefits or are close to retirement, you are not going to wake up one day to a zero balance. The payroll taxes that fund Social Security are ongoing, and even in a worst-case scenario where the trust fund is depleted, the system could still pay out the majority of promised benefits from incoming tax revenue. But, and this is a critical but, without legislative intervention, benefits at their current levels are not mathematically guaranteed indefinitely. That is the honest truth. Anyone telling you otherwise is either uninformed or choosing to tell you what feels good instead of what is actually true. This is precisely why the Supreme Court ruling matters beyond just this particular moment in time. It is part of a larger conversation about accountability, about who actually controls the decisions that affect your financial security, about whether the agencies managing your benefits have to answer to the law the same way every other institution in this country does. The answer to that question should always be yes. And now there is a stronger legal structure in place to enforce that answer. That is a meaningful long-term development, even if its day-to-day impact isn't immediately visible. What you need to do right now. Specific, actionable steps. Here is the part of Senior Security Update that I consider the most important. Because information without action is just noise. I do not want you walking away from this with more anxiety and nothing to show for it. So let's talk about exactly what you should actually do with everything we've covered today. The first thing I want you to do is go directly to the Social Security Administration's official website, ssa.gov. and either create or log into your personal My Social Security account if you haven't done so already. Inside that account, you can see your complete earnings history, your projected benefit amounts at various retirement ages, and any recent notices or changes tied specifically to your record. If something in there looks wrong, if a number doesn't match what you were expecting, if there's a notice you don't understand, you want to know about that now. Not 6 months from now when a confusing letter arrives in your mailbox. Now, while you have time to address it calmly and correctly. The second thing I want you to do is stay engaged with what is happening legislatively, but in a deliberate, steady way, not in a panic scrolling through social media way. Sign up for updates from your congressional representative's office. When bills related to Social Security move through committees, those offices send constituent updates. You have more real influence in this process than most people realize, especially right now when legislators are paying close attention to what seniors in their districts are concerned about. A phone call or a written message to your representative's office about Social Security issues carries genuine weight in this environment. Use that leverage. The third thing I want you to do is have an honest look at your overall financial picture, not to stress yourself out, but to make sure you actually know where you stand. Know exactly what your monthly expenses are. Know what you have in savings. Have at least a basic plan for unexpected medical costs because they will come. If you have family members who might one day need to help navigate your finances, make sure they understand your situation now while you can walk them through it clearly and calmly. That kind of preparation is not pessimistic. It is one of the most empowering things you can do for yourself right now. And if you currently receive any form of means-tested assistance alongside your Social Security, Medicaid, SNAP, housing assistance, anything, I want you to proactively reach out to a benefits counselor before any supplemental payment arrives. Ask them specifically, if I receive a lump sum payment of X dollars, how does that affect my current eligibility for each program I'm enrolled in? Get a clear answer. Write it down. Have a plan for how you will handle that money if and when it comes. Being prepared for help is just as important as receiving it. The truth about financial security that Washington will never tell you. I want to close today's Senior Security Update with something that I come back to every single time we cover stories like this one. Because the Supreme Court ruling and the $2,000 check and all the legislative back and forth in Washington, as important as all of it is, none of it changes a fundamental truth about financial security that I want you to hold on to. The government is not your retirement plan. It was never designed to be. Social Security was built to be one leg of a three-legged stool. The other two legs are personal savings and whatever pension or retirement income you built during your working years. For a lot of seniors watching this right now, those other two legs got knocked out from under them by economic downturns, by medical crises, by circumstances nobody planned for and nobody deserved. I understand that. And I am not here to lecture anyone about what they should have done differently. But what I am here to tell you is this. The response to an uncertain external system is always a stronger internal foundation. Take every bit of control you possibly can over the pieces of your financial life that are actually within your reach. Stay informed about what Washington is doing. Stay engaged in the process. Advocate for yourself and for every other senior in your life who deserves to have these things explained clearly and honestly. And make the strongest decisions you can with what you have right now. The Supreme Court ruling this week is a real step toward accountability for a system that has operated without enough of it for a very long time. The $2,000 check conversation is a genuine signal that the voices of seniors in this country are being heard in ways they haven't been in recent years. Both of those things matter. Both of those things are worth paying attention to. But your financial security, your real, lasting financial security, has never come and will never come from a check the government sends you. It comes from understanding your money. It comes from managing your money with clarity and intention. It comes from refusing to let fear, confusion, or the endless noise of Washington politics make your decisions for you. I'm Zane. This has been Senior Security Update. This story is not finished. Not the ruling, not the legislation, not the larger fight for the retirement security that every American who worked for it genuinely deserves. And I will be right here, covering every development, every twist, every important update as it happens. Stay informed, stay engaged, and I'll see you in the next one.